of the pancreatic head.
The Whipple is very complicated. It's where they kind of redesign your digestive system. They take you apart, literally, and they put you back together, some.
And in order to perform this procedure, one actually has to resect a portion of the stomach, the small intestine, the head of the pancreas, and the bile duct in order to take out a pancreatic head tumor.
20% of the people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer can have the Whipple. That's it. It's not a fail-safe, but it is what we have to cure pancreatic cancer right now. When you're diagnosed with pancreas cancer, it's all about time. There's so many things that seem little that become big when you have a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. And I still feel that way 11 years later. Everything is good. It is for me.
A cancer diagnosis stops us in our tracks. Some are easier to treat than others. What about brain cancers? Sometimes these cancers actually start somewhere else in the body and then metastasize to the brain. Let's meet one of the country's leading neurological brain surgeons now to better understand the complexity of brain cancers.
I'm Frank Briones. I'm a neurosurgeon, and I'm the director of the Marcus Neuroscience Institute here in Boca Raton. Cancer is a complicated issue. You have to essentially approach it like you're climbing Mount Everest. You have to really remove the tumor at the same time, ensure that the patient is safe. Dealing with patients with cancer certainly is not for the faint of heart. As far as the brain now, we have a lot of modalities we didn't have. This is one of the examples. It's called an exoscope, and it's really a three-dimensional endoscope that you can operate and looking on a screen. You actually put these glasses here, which are three-dimensional glasses, and this is, for example, a model of the spine. When we can see things so crisp, that makes surgery quite a bit safer. We have tractography. We can see the fiber tracks into the brain and in relationship to the tumor. We have intraoperative MRI or CT scan, so we can really update our information as to where the tumor is. Every tumor is unique. There's almost no tumor that's exactly the same from patient to patient. It takes a lot of mutations to get to a tumor, maybe 50, 60 for a brain tumor. Treatment is almost always personalized because we are in the era of precision medicine. This is a very exciting field because we believe that now we know a lot of the genetic abnormalities with cancer, and I think over the next 20 to 30 years we'll see major developments in the field of oncology. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Dr.
How are
Briones.
you?
Very good. How are you?
Good to see you. How are you feeling?
I feel really good.
Every visit in the doctor is really a very, very stressful event for cancer patients. It is a journey, and it is difficult to live with the uncertainty of every day.
My name is Melanie Ginther, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. So I was diagnosed at stage 4 from the very beginning, and I was very surprised. I went over to my new facility, and the doctor was treating me with just regular IV chemo, and one day he said, "Have you ever had a brain scan or an MRI?" And I said no. He goes, "I think it would be a good thing to do and see how things are looking." And when he did, that's when I discovered that it had metastasized to the brain. The best bet was to have surgery with Dr. Veronis to remove the actual lesion. I think that if you dwell on it and you're sad, you're going to be miserable. If you fight and say, I'm going to beat this, you'll win. I have a daughter, and I wanted to see her grow up. I want to see her graduate. I'm doing well, and I'm responding to all my treatments, and I'm not going to let it get me. I'm going to get it. Sorry.
What are the causes and risk factors of colon cancer? Age, lifestyle, habits, or genetics? Colon cancer is now being diagnosed in people far younger than ever before. But why? If left untreated, this cancer can be very unforgiving.
Colon cancer in the world is probably the third most common tumor. In our country, it's the second most common. We know in this country, we're more sedentary, people smoke. You eat a diet that's got a lot of red meat to it. They drink fairly heavily. They are obese. We pay the price for our more sedentary lifestyle without discretion about how we look after each other. We've made some of our biggest advances in treating colon cancer by preventing the disease. And you have to start first and foremost with colonoscopies. A colonoscopy visualizes the entire portion of the colon. And if you have a good examination, you should be able to identify somebody who's got a polyp, which could evolve to a cancer over time or to an active colon cancer. I recommend a colonoscopy for the vast majority of people who want to be clear of the risk of colon cancer. Hey, Kim, how you doing? Happy New Year to you.
You too.
Everything's getting better.
Oh, that's good.
So that's great. One person who I have a lot of admiration for is one of my patients named Kimberly. From the get-go, she knew that she had metastatic colon cancer. She just endures through everything, and I just adore her. She's just the best. So, dancing how often?
A lot.
Does it slow you down at all, this
No.
treatment? Not a bit.
At 51, I was having a pain here. When I thought of at first, we losing weight because I'm out there dancing, because I'm a dancing person. After that, I just started having that little pain when I started going to work. And then I was like, okay, if I keep feeling this pain, I'm going to go to urgent care. I went to see the doctor, and that's when he told me I had stage 4 colon cancer. I was like, are you serious? Because I was like in good health. And when he stepped out for a minute, I grabbed myself for a minute and then came back. I said, I'm gonna be fine. God got me.
Attitude goes a long way in this situation.
We're living in a time of real medical treatment breakthroughs for a wide range of cancers, from precision medicine, immunotherapy, to frontline integrative treatments. How have these new approaches offered real hope for those on a cancer journey?
So my board certification was emergency medicine, and I was running emergency departments throughout my career. And my mom walked into the emergency department where I was working, complaining of chest pain. And we did a CT scan, and I diagnosed her with metastatic lung cancer to liver, spleen, bilateral adrenal glands, and left hip. I presented her with many different options, but my mother refused almost every option. Interestingly, the only thing she allowed me to do was give intravenous vitamin C. And not that I thought that that was going to be a home run by any means, but it was an adjunct. And she was told by the oncologist that if she did chemotherapy, she could live 6 months, no chemotherapy, maybe 4 months. She ended up living 11 months just getting intravenous vitamin C. That's where my journey changed course. Conventional oncology is surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. There's a lot of research now studying the tumor microenvironment, realizing that we can't simply blast all these cells with maximum tolerated dose chemotherapy and expect to win the game, because it hasn't worked in 30, 40 years. It's certainly not going to suddenly start working. I was very frustrated with reviewing the data, realizing that we continue to do the same thing with the same poor outcomes. Now we have specific targeted drugs that target specific mutations, and now we have immunotherapy. And then there are folks that practice all different types of alternative cancer treatment. And alternative cancer treatment can include many modalities such as meditation, acupuncture, but also naturopathic medicine, using many different herbs and supplements and dietary techniques. And then there's something that, a term that I like to use, called integrative. My idea is to use everything that has data supporting its efficacy. So I use chemotherapy, but in a different fashion. I use all the drugs that conventional oncologists use. I use it, but I'll often alter the dosing to make it less toxic to patients while keeping efficacy. Having said that, I use drugs that are off-label that have shown to have efficacy in the treatment of cancer. I use different supplements or vitamins when we have published data on it. The idea of repurposing drugs is to study the mechanisms of actions of all these old drugs and use them appropriately for cancer. There's a possibility that we don't even need to develop new drugs. We can simply repurpose many of the drugs that are already developed. Copper is essential for angiogenesis, which means the development of new blood vessels for cancer growth. So this drug, ammonium tetrathiomolybdate, that's a big word. We abbreviate it by calling it TM. It doesn't generate any excitement because the patent's long gone and it's no longer even produced by the pharmaceutical industry. So this drug is not financially attractive. But having used this drug in patients all over the world for over 13 years, it is the single most powerful angiogenesis inhibitor. When you have a cancer that is very, what we call glycolytic or sugar-loving, very often it becomes that way because the cancer is lacking adequate blood supply and oxygen. And giving hyperbaric oxygen can turn off that cancer from becoming so glycolytic or sugar-loving. It's very important that the integrative doctor just looks at all the raw data and knows how to assimilate that using everything that may have efficacy in improving both the quality of life and the amount of life for each patient.
Fighting time, every day's battle of the same crime. I wish I could heal you from the inside, calm the tide. I pray, strength that you make you better. I wrote it in a letter.
My name's Layla Ali Ahmad. I am 31 years old now. I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 26 in June of 2014.
When Layla was first diagnosed stage 3, initially we were all terrified. My aunt had died fairly young from breast cancer, and so we, were worried that we were looking at the same situation. And eventually we talked to the doctors, and they reassured us that as long as she went through all of the standard treatments, that most likely she would be fine.
So I did a double mastectomy with reconstruction. After reconstruction, I went into 33 rounds of radiation, and then I was technically in remission, and then 2 years to the date, I was re-diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in my bones. When I got re-diagnosed, it was kind of like a punch to the gut, and it was going to be another chemo drug, and then it was going to be back to IV chemo.
The situation that we were in was truly desperate. Layla had failed the first-line treatment, and we pulled up the clinical trials of the remaining treatment options. We quickly realized there was little to no hope that any variation of standard of care was going to work. It just felt so overwhelming, the idea of losing her. And so at some point I decided that failure was just not an option. This could not happen. This was something that I decided to stop thinking about and instead start thinking about how do we overcome the odds to make sure that we don't have to face this tragedy in our lives.
I changed my diet pretty drastically for about a month. I didn't cheat at all. Essentially, I cut out all sugar, all carbohydrates, all alcohol. I cut out protein as well. So I was essentially on a ketogenic vegan diet for a straight month. And after that month, my tumor markers dropped in half. And we knew that this wasn't going to necessarily be enough to take me all the way, but it was weakening the cancer cells enough so that we could maybe start to think about another direction.
We decided to look for doctors who thought like we did. Doctors who administered innovative combination treatments based on the currently available evidence and a balance of potential risk and benefit.
Fighting time, every day's battle of the same crime. I wish I could heal you from the inside. Calm the tide.
My family and I went into my oncologist's office when we decided that we wanted to go to Vienna. And we were really worried that we were going to be abandoned by him when we told him what we wanted to do. And when we approached him with it, he was actually really supportive. And he said, hey, listen, I think this might work for you. And yeah, maybe it's worth a shot. After my second trip to Vienna, we started consulting with other doctors. What Dr. Rosenberg was doing was low-dose metronomic chemotherapy along with some other integrative approaches.
I will never forget that first consultation with Dr. Rosenberg. I was stunned. He had incorporated many of the things that we had read about from all over the world into his treatment, and he looked past the barriers that held cancer treatment back, and he only evaluated one thing: the currently available evidence and how that translated into risk and benefit for his patients. Her tumor markers came crashing down, and she began to feel better almost right away.
4 weeks into my treatment with Dr. Rosenberg, we flew to Mexico City to meet with Dr. Williams, and he did an intratumoral injection of CpG OX40 and Yervoy into 2 of my liver sites. And then I flew back to Florida to continue the treatment.
Her tumor markers came crashing down, and she began to feel better almost right away.
After 12 weeks, we did a scan, and the PET scan showed that I had no evidence of disease.
Real happiness started to creep back into our lives, which for so long had just been dominated by fear and pain and the resolve to find an answer.
Be your own advocate. You know, cancer is scary and it's complicated, and it's important to do your research and to know that while your doctor may have the best intentions, it's also your responsibility to start to look into all of the options.
I'm Anna Noon. I'm with my mom here today at Dr. Rosenberg's office in Boca, Florida. My mom's cancer journey started a while ago. She was noticing a ripple in her breast when she lifted up her arm. She went to some of the best breast specialists in New York. Everyone said it was nothing. It wasn't until 2015 that something actually showed up on a sonogram, not a mammogram. She was diagnosed with stage 2, estrogen positive, PR negative, HER2 negative breast cancer. She had a mastectomy, they did chemo for 6 months, nothing too crazy. She didn't even lose her hair. And she, they told her she was gonna be fine. They told her there was nothing to worry about. She started having some bone pains in April of 2018, and that's when, she started really asking her doctor for a PET scan. He was like, quote, unquote, I will give you a PET scan to shut you up. So that's when her bones lit up. And he came in and, he's honestly extremely arrogant and was like, I'm shocked. We weren't expecting this for you. And he said, you have stage 4 cancer, spread to the bones. She was just completely blindsided because for 3 years, they made it sound like there was just absolutely nothing to worry about. After we decided we weren't gonna go the traditional route with my mom, I did a lot of research and a lot of digging, spoke to a lot of people, and we basically came across Dr. Rosenberg. And that's where we are today. And we can't be happier. Her cancer has gotten way better. You can see she looks great. She has her hair, her immune system is stronger than ever. She used to get sick, and she hasn't been sick at all since she started work. This entire winter, she didn't get one cold.
I feel good today. So I don't have any pain, and I'm not scared anymore.
I'm David Rollet. I'm a professor and cancer researcher at University of California at Berkeley, and we work on developing new ways to treat cancer. Immunology really became a field because of work in infectious disease, viruses and microbes that attack you. And more recently, it's become clear that they have a role in cancer, and that's really where this new work becomes relevant. Immunotherapy is proving to actually apparently cure many people. That is, people are treated, the tumors go away, and even now 10 years out, many of these patients don't have any detectable cancer. The immune system does actually attack cancer, albeit not always successfully. And so the idea now is that once we know that happens, then we can design ways to do that. Cancer cells, it turns out, are highly stressed cells. And as a result, tumor cells, cancer cells, activate a series of pathways, and they elaborate mechanisms to try and counter the stress. We knew there was a molecule that served essentially as the accelerator for the T cell, that revved the T cell up. It was called the co-stimulator, but no one knew what it was. And we learned it was a molecule called CD28 and started studying molecules that are related to CD28. And that's what led to this breakthrough finding. And if you block this molecule called CTLA4, you essentially take off the brakes, and now the immune system can attack cancer more efficiently. Our immune cells, called killer cells, can actually attach to, recognize, and kill other cells. So for example, they can kill cancer cells. What we focus on are ways to mobilize natural killer cells to kill cancer. We think it's going to be an important new way to treat cancer, next generation cancer therapy. What I'm looking at here are natural killer cells that have been put into tissue culture, grown in the incubator. We can expand them to very large numbers. We use them as a tool, as a way to study how natural killer cells kill cancer cells. This is really a sea change, I think, in expectations for cancer therapy, that in some cases cures can be developed. And it's very promising to think we can develop even better kinds of immunotherapy to treat more kinds of cancer. I had a diagnosis in my mid-50s of prostate cancer. I was treated for it, looked good initially, and then a few years later I had a recurrence, and that was even more scary. Certainly having had this experience has been really important for me in helping me understand what cancer patients go through and It's really motivating in the research I do as well.
Every tumor is unique. There's almost no tumor that's exactly the same from patient to patient. It takes a lot of mutations to get to a tumor, maybe 50, 60 for a brain tumor. The bottom line is these type of mutations or these type of genetic events, sometimes we have drugs that can potentially help us in treating these patients. In addition to that, the molecular signature of the tumor many times helps us with the diagnosis. Sometimes we change the pathological diagnosis based not on the way the tumor or a cancer looks on the under the microscope, but what it looks like at the molecular level. Precision medicine is really a way to look into the molecular signature of the tumor. And this is a very exciting field because we believe that now we know a lot of the genetic abnormalities with cancer. Now the next phase is to find ways to really interrupt the pathways that lead to cancer itself. And I think over the next 20 to 30 years, we'll see major developments in the field of oncology.
Welcome back. You know, so many of us remember the days of slathering on baby oil to acquire that rich, dark tan. Of course, we've learned so much since those days about the dangers of the sun's UV rays. But are we doing enough as an aging society? And what about the younger generations? Let's step below the skin now to better understand skin cancers.
There has been some speculation that years of damage to the ozone layer may allow more ultraviolet radiation in now than there used to be. What I think is the biggest change in recent decades is our society's attitude towards sun exposure.
You get a quicker tan, a double tan when you use QT.
Guaranteed.
Don't hide it, flash 'em your copper tone tan. Flash 'em the dark tan, flash 'em the fast tan.
If you look back 100 years ago at old photographs of people at the beach, you saw these bathing suits that covered virtually the whole body. Today, a feeling like we should be out in the sun more, or feeling like there's something attractive, even sexy about a tan. I'm Dr. Vernon Sondak. I'm the chair of the Department of Cutaneous Oncology and a cancer surgeon here at the Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida. People don't realize what a critically important organ the skin really is. And one of the primary ways the skin protects us is by protecting us from the harmful rays of the sun. The ultraviolet light that penetrates the Earth's atmosphere hits our skin, and the pigment cells that produce melanin spring into action to protect the other sensitive cells in the skin. Melanoma is the kind of skin cancer that develops from those protector cells in our skin, the melanocytes. When they themselves have been damaged and they become malignant, they grow without the normal controls and constraints that cells normally have. The melanoma begins to invade and can quickly reach layers of the skin where it can spread first to your lymph nodes and then out into the bloodstream. And if it does that, left unchecked, that melanoma will eventually kill somebody. even when we get a tan, that's our body adapting to the amount of ultraviolet radiation. And we have DNA damage and sometimes cell death. Even a single severe sunburn early in life can be enough to trigger melanoma. About 1 in every 5 Caucasian adults in the United States will get skin cancer at some point in their lifetime. We recommend broad spectrum sunscreen, one that covers both UVA and UVB. The SPF number reflects the relative protection that sunscreen provides. SPF of 10 means it would take 10 times longer to get burned with that amount of sunscreen on than it would without it. One of the things about skin cancer that we can't emphasize enough, it's right there on your skin. We have the opportunity for early diagnosis.
None of them look the same. So we look at the asymmetry of the lesion, we look at its size, we look at its cellularity, we look at the cells and see, do they look malignant or do they look benign? So for example, when you hear about the ABCDEs, we can see these under the microscope.
A normal mole shouldn't have any of these ABCD signs. Most normal moles should have a smooth edge, but an abnormal mole or a melanoma will have a more irregular edge. Many melanomas have variable colors, so a dark color developing in a previous light tan mole, very concerning sign. Whenever we see a mole that's irregularly shaped, we know that this is at least an abnormal mole and might be melanoma.
2015, I was at our local pool and my daughter noticed a mole on my back that had gotten changed in shape and color. Finally took all of their advice and urging and went to see a dermatologist who looked at it right away and said, why did you wait until now this thing is ugly.
So once that first melanocyte goes bad and begins melanoma, now we're on a downward path where the melanomas continue to grow. Sooner or later, those melanoma cells will implant somewhere, whether it's in your lungs, your liver, your brain.
It was everywhere. It was in 15 different places in my body, including my left lung. I remember the oncologist, looking at the diagnosis of the PET scan and saying, I don't know what to tell you other than you're stage 4. I had read a lot of articles about Keytruda online.
In the last 8 years, dozens of new drugs have been developed for melanoma that exploit both the immune system and targeted treatments that identify weaknesses in the genes of the melanoma and attack the mutations that the melanoma uses to grow and divide and thrive.
So think of the immune system as being turned off in most cancers. And what a drug like Keytruda does, it releases the brakes on the T cell to allow the T cell to attack the cancer.
The T cells are the natural surveillance and attack mechanism that our body has for attacking invaders.
I felt almost immediately after my first 2 or 3 infusions, a reduction in the size of the tumors that I could feel in my body. The Keytruda was obviously doing its job. In a year, my cancer was gone.
We're seeing responses in patients that we never really thought would be possible just by stimulating the immune system.
The survival rate for metastatic melanoma was pretty much abysmal. The survival rate at 5 years was approximately 5%. Now, with the advent of immune therapy, we can get these numbers upwards of about 30-40%.
We now use these immune therapy drugs in virtually every form of skin cancer, but also in lung cancer, in some forms of colon cancer, all across the whole spectrum of diseases. One of the scary things about cancer is how it almost seems to anticipate what we're going to do to attack it and come up with a defense. We have to protect ourselves with sunscreens, with clothing, with behaviors that make us safe for the sun. I often tell my patients who had an early cancer detected, the sun was trying to kill you. It didn't succeed this time. Don't give it a second chance.
It was Mother's Day of 2017. I was dancing around my house to the song, and I had tipped my head back really hard and then fell forward and blacked out. I ended up going in for an MRI. I got a phone call the next day, and they told me I had a medulloblastoma, which is a childhood cancer that usually affects kids about 6 to 10. When I was diagnosed, I almost went numb for a while. I thought of it more of a death sentence than anything. When I got the call saying that you do have cancer, everything kind of moved really fast from there. They started radiation within maybe 3 weeks of me originally finding out. It was not something I was prepared for. At that time, I was just so angry and so upset for a while. And then after a few days, I thought about it, and I was like, if I'm gonna start treatment, I wanna do this the right way. I dyed my hair for the first time purple. My young brother did it with me. When it first started falling out, it broke my heart all over again, because I was so emotionally attached to my hair. I feel almost like everything is temporary, my hair included. I mean, even right now, I have my pretty bald head, and it's something that I can deal with. Put one foot in front of the other and be able to say, I'm over it.
As a mom, it's been very rough. You never want to see your kids sick, let alone with something like this. But to get that call to find out that she actually had cancer was just devastating. We were lucky enough that they had the option of Megan going through proton radiation instead of full-out radiation.
Megan has a cancer that is called medulloblastoma. The treatment of such cancer is a combination of surgery and chemotherapy and radiation. And the best treatment of choice for the radiation portion for Megan is proton therapy because of her young age, and proton is very accurate and precise. Therefore, it is the best treatment of choice for her.
So the big advantage to protons over X-rays is that they go in and they stop. And so there's a zero exit dose from that kind of radiation therapy. So protons have the advantage of being able to treat a cancer to a full dose while reducing the dose to adjacent normal tissues dramatically. So a proton is a positively charged subatomic particle that we accelerate with big magnets to very close to the speed of light. When those protons smash into the patient, what they do is they damage the DNA in a very specific depth that's dependent on the energy range of the incident beam.
all the critical area adjacent to the tumor or the area that we're treating will get pretty much minimal dose. And that's the beauty of it, because radiation not only kills cancer cells, also can cause toxicity and secondary malignancy in the long run. And we don't want that for young patients such as Megan.
On my last day of treatment, I get to ring the bell. And out of anything that I have done in my life, that is one of the most rewarding things. And I remember hearing so many times everyone else ring the bell, and I would count down the days until it was my turn.
So I'm in the hospital for chemo treatment. I'm just doing chemo. I'm not doing antibody anymore. I was doing my antibody therapy like I was supposed to, and what happened was the antibody therapy I do focuses on nerve cells, and it attacked all the nerve cells in my left leg, and the first day it happened, I couldn't move my toes, and I've never felt so terrible, because who wants to have cancer and be crippled? I'm Brittany Naylor. I'm 22 years old, and I've been dealing with neuroblastoma stage 4 since December 2015.
So I'm Dr. Greg Yannick. I'm somebody who's got the best job in the world. My job is to walk with these children, to hold their hand, to help them through the journey that they face when they're going through this battle against cancer. Brittany is a young lady that faced this battle in an amazing way. How somebody can just face death in the eye, but not even think about it, not even blink, because she's focused on living. She's not focused on dying.
I'm Nancy Sovereign, the Executive Director from Wish Upon a Teen. I'm here today to design Brittany's hospital room.
When you realize the moment a family or a person, a young adult realizes that they have cancer and their oncologist tells them, well, you have 6 months, a year, every day means something.
I think it says something about a child having to endure something as tough as cancer goes, and being able to kind of just, put a smile on and still go on being a happy kid.
Attitude is everything, and I think there is no better example than young kids and teenagers who are fighting the cancer.
When I'm meeting parents for the first time, when their child has cancer, I feel that you have to actually be right out and open. You can't draw out the conversation. I think the quicker you get the cancer word out, you can then move on to talk about what your plans are to get their child better, how to treat them, how to heal them, how to cure them. For a younger child, it's obviously very challenging. I think we start off with talking about bad cells in their body and giving them medicine to make the bad cells go away. But always trying to emphasize that the child was not responsible for them going through what they are, that nobody's punishing them, they didn't do anything wrong. Unfortunately, in childhood cancer, we don't know what causes children to develop cancer, so there's nothing we can do to prevent children who are just otherwise healthy to develop cancer, so it just sort of comes out of nowhere. Childhood cancer has made a lot of progress. If I look at all the patients that I treat who walk in the door, probably about 80% of them are cured. Glenn, who I'm seeing today, he was cancer-free for about 8 years, and then his cancer came back very suddenly. But yet when you see him, he looks very well, very happy, positive attitude. Children, to me, what they've taught me is they're quite remarkable, that despite what they're going through, they can still be children, they can still be positive. Well, see, magic, I think that distracts them from what they're there for. What should I do now? You cut it in half. Should I put it back together again? Wow. He's a tough customer. They inspire us to continue doing what we want to do. They come to a clinic and quite often they're getting something that can be a distraction, or the different organizations in the community that help with children, whether it's Kids Kicking Cancer, that was pioneered here about 20 years ago.
Kids Kicking Cancer uses the power of martial arts as a therapy to get into the hearts and minds of children, teaches them the breathing and meditative techniques of the martial arts, significantly lowers their pain, fear, and turns them from being victims into victors over their disease. The first teacher for me in the world of pediatric oncology was our daughter, Sorbasia. A week before her first birthday, she was diagnosed with ALL. She was an amazing little soul. At 2 years old, at a bone marrow transplant at UCLA, she would tell the docs, "No medication today, please," and tell the 5-year-old kids in the clinic not to cry. So she was the inspiration for me for beginning Kids Kicking Cancer. The mantra of Kids Kicking Cancer is power, peace, purpose. What the disease teaches a child upon diagnosis is that he or she is different from all of their friends. And all of a sudden they find themselves prodded and poked and held down, and their whole script of life has been ripped up and taken from them. We teach the children that, in fact, you are different from your friends. But because you're a martial artist, that difference allows you to teach the world how to breathe in this light, because everyone has darkness, everyone has stress. We have the most extraordinary staff of professionals and volunteers, or black belts, who have dedicated their life to martial arts. And when you see these instructors stand by the bed of a child and hold their hand and let that child know that you're a powerful martial artist, they ignite the souls of these children.
My name is Michael. I am one of the martial arts therapists at Kids Kicking Cancer.
Power, peace, purpose.
And what I do is I see kids, I teach the classes, our outpatient classes, and I also see kids in the hospital. I can tell them, hey, I've done that journey. I was diagnosed with cancer in 1997. I did a year of high-dose chemo. I just didn't do anything physical. I've always had a joy of doing martial arts and seeing, karate movies, and I heard about the program and I said, this would be great. I listened to Rabbi G talk about all the breathing and the meditations and how it was going to help us. At the time, it was just to help me. However, over all the years, it's no longer about me. It's about all the kids. It's about helping them. I go into the hospital and I'm able to share my story with the kids. I'm able to come to class, teach the classes, and share my story with them.
The karate we do here isn't just karate, but it's also like a meditation. Coming here, I made a lot of new friends, so you don't have to be lonely, because I learned that there are a lot of other people who have this and that they support me. It's kind of like a second family.
The Kids Kicking Cancer mantra is so powerful that not only are the children affected, but their parents are affected.
When we found Kids Kicking Cancer, we had no idea the impact that it would give to us. When Aiden would first go and get access at the hospital, he was only 2.5. When they would come at him with a needle to his chest, he would scream very loudly. This organization gave him a tool to use to breathe, power breathe through these painful moments. Even now, when we go and he gets blood drawn from his arms, same thing. They think that we need to hold him down. We never do. He just sits calmly and has these, tests done to him. And it's something that he can do for himself that as parents we could have never given him that.
The martial arts is really about the battle. Karate really means an open hand and the approach to a battle without weapons. We worked with extraordinary grandmasters across the globe, and they tell us this is the real martial arts, the ability to conquer the inside, to reach that energy, not to be afraid of the darkness, but not only to take control over that darkness, but to teach the world how to use that light. We're going to take that light that you have used, which is so, so powerful, and you're going to be a teacher for us forever. For me to travel the planet with the light of those children, and of course, the beautiful smile of my daughter, is the greatest privilege.
When a family receives a diagnosis, their child has a brain tumor, it's obviously a game changer for that family. In the last few decades, pediatric oncology as a field has made a lot of progress on some childhood malignancies. So one example is leukemia, where we've gone from that being relatively incurable a century ago to now 90+% of those children are having long-term survival. The focus of my lab primarily is on pediatric high-grade glioma and DIPG, which are tumors that are not historically curable, and so we have a lot of progress still to make. Emerson, she is 7 years old and has aggressive high-grade glioma in her thalamus. This is a tumor that can't be removed, and radiation helps, but it isn't curative. Our understanding of pediatric brain tumors is that they are caused by random errors that occur just as the brain and the brainstem develop, cells divide, all of that genetic material has to be duplicated, and every time that happens there's a chance for error. And so pediatric cancers are different that way from adult cancers, and they are, especially in our younger patients, diseases of a defect in development. I really try to get that across to the family that this happened and it is 100% not your fault. So Sam is a patient I follow. He has a high-grade glioma. This is a tumor that has a less than 20% 5-year survival. We don't have a treatment beyond radiation that has been proven to help.
Our son Sam, right now he's an 18-year-old high school senior, but when he was 14 and a freshman in high school, he was diagnosed with glioblastoma.
Going into the fall of my freshman year, I was feeling really tired, and I was never really sick, but I had double vision from doctor to doctor, and nobody knew what it was, so they finally told us to go get an MRI to get it checked out, and that's when they found the tumor. I had brain surgery the next day.
The family looked into Optune, and this is a wrap that patients have to wear 18 hours out of the day, and it provides an energy that, when aimed at the tumor bed, affects cells and their ability to divide. He's now been on that therapy targeting his tumor bed for 3 years, and we don't have any evidence that the tumor has grown back. Sam is he's one patient, but he's a success story of we're using localized and targeted therapies that aren't going to affect his ability to grow muscle, learn in school, be on the basketball team. He has very high quality of life.
He's beat all the odds. He is literally 40 months post-diagnosis on a diagnosis that typically lasts 12 to 18 months. So we are seeing that by doing things a little differently, by thinking outside of the box, by expanding our horizons, by asking questions, that we can actually affect the outcome.
It's more than just a mother or father that are battling this. It's an entire community that is often coming together. Gilda's Club, Wish Upon a Teen, Rainbow Connection, Make-A-Wish, all these groups are all coming together just to bring a smile to a child's face.
Back in 2003, my 13-year-old daughter, Mandy, contracted a very, very rare childhood cancer called rhabdomyosarcoma. And we began our journey, which was one that was incredibly scary. I had this feeling in my gut that somehow I was going to have to save her, because if I didn't, I would fail as a father. And so we were kind of spinning out of control. And then in walks Ingrid, the Rainbow Connection, and said to Mandy, "You're entitled to a wish." We all thought she was going to go to Disney World, but without blinking an eye, she looked at Ingrid and she said, "I'd like for you to lease me a horse." Mac the horse became pure therapy for not only Mandy, but for my family as well. And unfortunately, Mandy passed away in 2007 after a very long battle with rhabdomyosarcoma. My name is George Miller. I used to be the director for the Department of Health and Human Services for Oakland County. Now I'm the executive director for the Rainbow Connection. When families learn of the terrible news of their child having a life-threatening medical condition, it's devastating. We want to provide you with some hope. We want to provide you with some continuity with the family to bring them back together by creating a wish that maybe is as simple as a shopping spree to as magical as a Disney trip.
When we meet a child that's battling cancer, they teach us how important every single moment of life is and how we should just appreciate those moments, even the little ones. They count the most. Our executive director, George Miller, is very unique in his position. Not only is he the executive director here, but on a personal note, he is a wish dad. He's lived it, he's dealt with it, and he knows how incredible it can be and what it means to a child who's going through cancer at this time.
And with the Rainbow Connection, with Gilda's Clubs, with other organizations that are in the community, we try to provide those quiet wraparound services, as I like to call it, so that the whole community starts to hug them. Every day that I start my day here at the Rainbow Connection, and my office is right next door to the Wish Wall. And every day I walk by and I look at those kids and I say a quick prayer. But at that same time, I think of Mandy. One point in time, she was on that Wish Wall. It's a reminder to me every day that Mandy is in my heart and will always be, and that we're trying to provide hope to the kids that remain on that Wish Wall, and then as the names change, we want to continue to provide the hope and the wishes for those kids.
Rainbow Connection, making wishes come true. Yeah!
Now, what are blood cancers? Who do they affect? And what role does the lymphatic system play in our health?
Blood cancers can be lymphomas, leukemias, multiple myelomas in general terms. And leukemias can affect the patient's blood counts. Lymphomas usually will cause patients to have some effects on their body, like fevers, chills, or enlarged lymph nodes. And multiple myeloma is a cancer that causes weakness of the bones, or it can affect the kidneys, or cause patients to have low counts or confusion, which initially brings them to the attention of the physician. There's different forms of leukemias. Acute leukemias that usually happen quickly and don't have a long lag period, versus chronic leukemias that sometimes can go on for many years and go unrecognized for a period of time before they get recognized. It's more common for the kids to have acute leukemias, especially acute lymphoblastic leukemias. The children might have bruises or bleeding from their gums, or feeling lethargic, or sometimes children can have infections, and further blood work will show that they have abnormal populations in their blood.
In terms of the chronic leukemias, majority of them will be seen in adults. Those are chronic lymphocytic leukemia or chronic myeloid leukemias. So lymphomas are generally cancers of the lymph glands, and we classify them into two categories. One is called Hodgkin's lymphoma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So non-Hodgkin's lymphoma are a type of cancer that involves the lymph glands in the body. And lymph glands are normal in everybody's body. In lymphoma, the lymph nodes don't shrink back to the normal size after the inciting event is gone. So the lymphatic system is part of our immune system. Kind of works like a filter in the body to help clean out any noxious agents that might have come into the body and prevent you from getting sick. So you can think of bone marrow as the factory where all the blood cells are being made. So in the bone marrow are primitive cells called stem cells that lead to the manufacture three main types of cells that circulate in our blood. That's the red blood cells that help carry the oxygen, the white blood cells that help fight off infections, and platelets are the cells that help you clot when you bleed from somewhere. And all of those cells are made inside of the bone marrow, and the end product is what we see circulating in our blood vessels. Once we determine that a patient is going to benefit from a stem cell transplant or a bone marrow transplant, there's two ways of doing the transplant. When we use patients' own stem cells, those stem cells need to be harvested. The patients then get high-dose chemotherapy, and those cells are put back into the patient so that they can have normal blood counts. Whereas in the other kind of transplant, where we use somebody else's stem cells, called the allogeneic stem cell transplant, we have to find a match for the patient, and then we use the stem cells from the matched donor and infuse it into the patient after giving them chemotherapy or radiation, and that gives them a new immune system. So the differences between the cancer and the new immune system is what keeps the cancer in check, and the new immune system is able to get rid of the cancer cells. So I have a patient who presented to her physician for a regular healthcare maintenance checkup and was noted to have slightly low blood counts, lower than normal, and she was referred to one of our colleagues in the community who did a bone marrow biopsy, and she was found to have a disease process called myelodysplastic syndrome, which sometimes can be a precursor to somebody developing acute myeloid leukemia.
I ended up going to my primary care physician, and they did some blood work and fortunately found some abnormal blood cells. I say fortunately because I feel they caught it early. And then I was referred to Karmanos.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi, Dr.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
As we were working her towards a stem cell transplant, her bone marrow biopsy that was repeated showed that she had actually progressed into acute myeloid leukemia. She went through chemotherapy. We were able to get her into remission from her leukemia. In the meantime, we found that one of her brothers was a match for her, and she went through a bone marrow stem cell transplant and is in remission from her disease and is being taken off all the immunosuppressive medications and is doing well.
I'm 1 year, 8 months, and counting.
As most oncologists and urologists will tell you, prostate cancer will eventually become a part of a man's life if he lives long enough. Truly one of the silent killers because of how the cancer can spread and how difficult it can be to diagnose. At greater risk are aging Vietnam veterans because of the toxic exposures they encountered while serving in Vietnam. Let's visit now with one of the leading oncologists at the VA in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
There's a number that we learn in medical school, which is once a man hits age 70, he has a 70% chance of having prostate cancer at that moment. When he hits age 80, he has an 80% chance. When he hits 90, 90% chance. The longer a man lives, it's more certain, if he lived forever, every man would have prostate cancer. The average age of diagnosis of prostate cancer is in the mid-60s. The tests we usually use to screen for prostate cancer is a blood test called a PSA test. It stands for prostate-specific antigen. So it's normal to have a level of PSA in the bloodstream. What's not normal is if that level starts rising quickly, or if it's a one-time check is significantly higher than normal. So symptoms, for example, are enlargement of the prostate. It may kind of obstruct the urethra or cause local symptoms, and when that happens, men can get what we call urgency, where they feel like they have to urinate frequently. Veterans who are exposed to Agent Orange, they're 1.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer than an average man who hasn't been exposed.
Anybody that's ever been in combat has memories, good and bad. I'd seen areas treated with Agent Orange. I'd seen Agent Orange being applied in the area. I don't think I really heard stories about it till afterwards. I think it was urinary problems. My PSA numbers were huge. They did a biopsy of the prostate. That was cancerous, and so that's where it all started.
Vets gave their lives, even the ones who are still around. They've sacrificed so much for us and for everyone.
The doctor told me that most men die with prostate cancer, but not of prostate cancer, so I'm probably in the later stages of that. Currently, every 3 weeks, I get the drip chemotherapy. Sometimes I wonder about where this treatment is all going, but I'm just sticking with the program. Like John Lennon said, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
It should not surprise anyone that lung cancer leads the list of cancer deaths in America. We all know that smoking is a big contributing factor, but do you know what's really in a cigarette?
The three major causes of lung cancer are smoking, smoking, and smoking. Lung cancer is a very serious malignancy, and the vast majority of lung cancers that are found in the United States today come from tobacco smoke. Not all of them. There's a variety of heavy metals, asbestos, radon gas that can also cause lung cancers. The big problem with smoking is taking tobacco leaves, burning them, taking those products of combustion, bringing them into your lungs. They're just loaded with a variety of carcinogens. Now, tobacco also is one of the best plants if you want to remove toxic metals from the ground. If there's a terrible radioactive spill, the best thing that you can plant just about is tobacco. It will suck up heavy metals and radioactive ones out of the ground and actually concentrate them in the leaves. And so what can happen is you burn those leaves, you breathe them in, and the products of combustion then land on your lungs, inside your lungs, and then even radiate them, giving them extra risk for malignancy. If we can reduce the amount of smoking that people do, we will dramatically reduce their lung cancer risk. 40% of the time, the presenting symptom of lung cancer is disease spread outside the lung. A brain metastasis, a bone metastasis, a coughing up blood. Those kinds of things are very often the presenting symptom. One of the greatest advances in lung cancer, in my opinion, in the last 10 years has been the development of lung cancer screening technologies. Getting low-dose screening CT scans actually improves survival. It's actually a better cancer test than pap smears, colonoscopy, and mammography. It has a higher incidence of finding a cancer, and it actually has been shown to improve survival in patients that are screened. Survival for middle stage lung cancers at the best centers is actually double what it was 10 years ago.
If a cancer diagnosis isn't devastating enough, then come the financial burdens that go along with it. With the outrageous cost of medical treatments in our country, this issue has become a real problem, not only for those without insurance, but even those who are insured. You can find that you beat cancer, only to find yourself then in a financial sinkhole.
Drug companies, as you know, they have a huge lobby, and the lobby on healthcare is bigger than energy and the military lobby altogether. And you can understand why it is so very difficult for any administration and any politician to make some meaningful changes in the heart of the problem. But financial viability and the cost of drugs is something that really, as a society, we have to face at some point.
Unfortunately, there is a natural bias towards expensive cancer treatments because pharmaceutical companies, they are not set up to just try and find an answer. They are set up to make money. So ultimately, the drugs that will be researched with urgency are the ones that have the ability to make a lot of profit. Those are the ones that get invested in. And there was I believe, a document that Goldman Sachs had sent out that was discovered by CNBC last year that explicitly asked this question, is curing cancer profitable as a long-term business model? Curing cancer is a lot less profitable than having patients who need repeat treatments. That makes a lot more money for a pharmaceutical company than a cure.
Would there be a financial disincentive to cure cancer? Of course. I mean, it's huge business, huge business. If we can come up with a way to manage your cancer so you can live indefinitely as long as you take the drug, then that's really a win-win for everybody, right? It's a win for pharmaceutical industry because they have to keep supplying the drug indefinitely, and it's a win for the patient because they stay alive.
This is real. Cancer care is real, and it costs a lot of money. And a lot of people go bankrupt trying to deal with cancer, trying to fight cancer.
In this country, there are too many stakeholders trying to get a hand in the pot. The only two stakeholders that matter, in my opinion, are the patient and the physician. But what ends up happening is they're the two that have the least control. So how is that fair to the victim of the cancer?
The Food and Drug Administration, which approves drugs, doesn't approve it based on costs. It approves it based on its efficacy, its benefit.
New Day Foundation is a local nonprofit organization, Michigan-based. We work with families who are struggling with something called financial toxicity. What we do is we work with them to offset the financial burden of cancer. While financial toxicity is definitely not a new problem, it's something that is being widely recognized in the media and it's being recognized globally. Financial toxicity does not discriminate. It's often insured people who are dealing with the problem of financial toxicity, and it's unexpected because people think cancer is a disease I have to beat physically, but they never for one moment think financially.
It will send any family towards the direction of poverty. And so that is an issue. It's a problem and it's ongoing and it's getting worse. I mean, I think people are getting pinched more than they were even 10 years ago.
Everybody thinks you're diagnosed, you go to the doctor, you run into the hospital, you get all the tests you want, but it's not that simple. To get a test, to get a scan, there's referrals, and then you kind of get the call from the hospital that says, just want to review financially the cost here. And that, I mean, there's no question you're going to get the test or you're going to try to get the test. And then you try to figure out the financial aspect of it later. And so even when you're through a diagnosis, you are not through with the toxic nature financially.
So let's say you
make it through cancer, which is an extremely, extremely difficult thing to do in the first place. So you get through all the emotional and physical and the oncological aspects of that, you still have a 20% copay generally. And with my bone marrow transplant and leading up to it and the hospitalization and the length of the hospitalization, it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It is a burden that can literally destroy a family. It can literally impact a treatment outcome, and it can cost someone their life.
I think that our current system of paying for drugs is not ideal.
Other countries, they have a council that has to approve drugs, and not only does benefit play a role in this, it's cost.
We pay more than any other country in the world does for drugs. The same drugs. You can get the same, I mean, we are very close to Canada here in Southeast Michigan, and we can get the same drugs often for a tenth of the price in Canada that you can get them for here in the US.
In Detroit, people give up their electricity bill to try and pay for treatments. Patients have to decide between their heating bill or paying for a copay to see the doctor, and they'll choose a doctor every single time.
This is f***ed up. This is really f***ed up, and it can't continue. And in the healthcare, I look at other models around the world, and I just read this long article on why Europeans don't have to pay enormous medical bills, and the construct there is just so much more disciplined, humane, well thought out. Not for profit, not greedy, but everybody does okay, including the healthcare companies.
And the number of patients that can afford the type of surgery that I have with the bills that they get are very few. And as a medical care provider, I never knew that until my patient brought in the bill from her hospitalization, which came in at $118,000. And I was only one part of the treatment. Our oath was that we would help people, and we're being bottlenecked by the high cost of medical care. That makes it extremely difficult to get patients the best care in a timely fashion to help them try and beat their cancer.
Too often, not even the best treatment can save a life, but hospice can make the end of life easier for a patient and their family. Hospice was founded in the 1960s by nurse Dom Cicely Saunders in London, England, and since then, it's made an immeasurable difference for those suffering.
A lot of people equate hospice with death. They feel like they're not going to get care and they're just there to die and they're just there for the final stages of life. Cancer patients do well in hospice because we can make sure that their symptoms are well controlled. They live actually longer in hospice. Pain, nausea, any of these other symptoms they may get from treatments that they had, all their needs are met within a hospice.
Well, my name is Dolores Rawlinson, and I'm a 4th-stage metastatic breast cancer patient. And it's in my back spine. And I'm sorry. I've had the radiation, I've had the chemo. I had them stop it because it was shutting me down so fast where I couldn't walk. They had that stigma when they say hospice, you're thinking, oh my God, you're gonna die. I don't look at it as death. The difference to me is the fact that I feel I get more care with the hospice than if I wasn't doing it.
I'm here today to see Dolores. She's a very pleasant lady. Unfortunately, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015. At that time, she had underwent chemo and radiation and did quite well. However, in 2018, she developed a recurrence where disease did progress and she declined further aggressive therapy. In August, a decision was made to place her into hospice to keep her comfortable. We're going to see her today and see how she's doing. Hi, good morning, Dolores.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Good. You look good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. So you've been getting some rest?
Yes. I kind of can't now. Because they don't offer physical therapy during this time. So I do my own. I bought me some 1 pound weights and I do my own therapy actually. When they heard hospice, I had to get my children under control because they went crazy. I said, honey, I'm fine. They're doing all they can. They're a good support group. And I think that's the best decision to make. They've done all they can do, so now, it's just me and God.